Welcome everybody to another edition of the Subscribers Town Hall this month for October. I am your host, Community Manager Jared Huckabee, and if you've never seen a Subscribers Town Hall before, that is where we allow our development subscribers, which are those members who contribute a monthly fee to the continuing development of Star Citizen, to ask questions live of members of CIG development staff. And this month we have members of the LA development team, so I'd like to take a few moments to introduce them and let them tell you a little bit about what it is they do. Immediately to my right, this is Mr. Sean Tracy. How you doing, Sean?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Awesome.
So why don't you tell the folks, because we have a lot of new backers, a lot of new subscribers even. Why don't you tell them a little bit about what you do? Give them your title and what you do for Star Citizen.
Okay. So I'm the technical content director, technical director of content. Basically, makes me responsible for everything that comes out of a DCC tool or a digital content creation tool. And goes into the engine. So basically, any of the content that we're making is my responsibility to some degree or
making
another.
It work.
Yeah, making it work, making it perform well, making sure we can actually do it, making sure it's scalable. There's a lot of it.
Gotcha. So the writers, the designers, they come up with these crazy things, and
Exactly.
then you're involved when it has to go into the game and actually work.
Yeah,
that's where you come.
Make it all. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool.
So yeah,
Bring-
somebody else promises and
He does a few things.
and we deliver. Yeah.
I mean,
That's
it seems
the
like a
idea.
lot, but it's just space. So basically,
Yeah.
anything
Yeah,
that
exactly.
can be made in space
Anything in the universe.
needs to
Just
transfer
make
to the
empty
screen,
space,
That's what
everything's
he
good.
does.
So people come to you and go, Sean, I got this great idea. I got this thing I want to do. And
Yeah, like a worm.
like a worm, like a giant sandworm.
Yeah,
Start
like
off
a worm.
strong.
And it's your responsibility to make that work.
And it's like, how do we make a worm work? I'm like, a what?
All right. Now, immediately to your right is Mr. Forrest Steffen. How you doing, Forrest?
Excellent.
Yeah?
As always. Yep.
You did some work on that sandworm, didn't you?
Oh, we all worked on that sandworm. It was a great team effort. I mean,
Right.
how do you get that thing wiggling through sand and jumping out and looking scary and looking
And not
great?
looking like a
Nope.
like
a worm from Tremors.
A worm from Tremors.
Yes, all right, so why don't you take a few moments and tell the folks watching what it is you do for Star Citizen in general.
Forrest, I'm CG supervisor, and my primary responsibilities is kind of working along Sean. And while Sean's getting all this stuff and making sure it's working in the engine, I spend a lot of time on the actual art side working with the graphics engineers and all the artists, ensuring that when we do get the content into the game, it visually can look the way that our art directors and Chris Roberts envision it to. So kind of the visual fidelity of the tech content getting into the game is kind of what I'm more responsible
All right. And what are some of the things you've worked on recently besides the sandworm?
Besides the sandworm, so we're continually evolving our modular system for the characters. We're continually pushing the visual fidelity on the characters, which I think we saw with the Sand Nomad. We're really starting to see these next-gen looking characters come in, and so a lot of the tech that really drives that. And then also kind of the workflow for the artists, trying to simplify the workflow so they can do things faster, and they can make it look better, right? Which is always a chess. We always want to push the fidelity, and we want to streamline the efficiency so we can do things quicker and create more content. That way, when the players play these games in the universe, they have plenty of art content to work for. And when we can do that with our, with the amount of artists that that we have.
We have a habit of making things look as well as they possibly can in this game.
Well, that's the challenge, right? We want, we're creating this MMO type, and we also have our single player, but at the same time, we don't want those kind of stereotypical MMO graphics,
Yeah.
right? The challenge is how to create an MMO with tons of players in the world, tons of customization, but still keep a visual fidelity of any other AAA title.
Yeah, gotcha. And last but certainly not least, on the end, Mr. EKD, Eric Chiron Davis himself. Eric,
That's
how you
me.
doing, man?
I'm living the dream. That's how I'm doing. How are you doing?
Somebody's
I'm
dream.
doing great.
I'm doing it. I'm having a good time.
So you are a senior producer for Star Citizen out of our LA office here. What does a senior producer do?
Senior, what is this? That's a great question.
What don't you
Can
do?
you tell me what?
Yes, cameras aren't on. I actually just really wanted to.
I'm really interested.
We've all been wondering for a while. So
What is it that you do?
It's anything and everything is of the role of a producer, and the senior producer in LA, and I also am the senior producer for Austin, so I work with Jake Ross in Austin Studio. My job is to help oversee any pipeline that's in Austin, work alongside these wonderful guys, try to keep them as happy as I possibly can, which is difficult at times because we're all working so hard, and then work alongside my production staff, planning, organizing, scheduling the best that we can, helping provide context and priorities, or working alongside the leads, and really all the pipelines for us here in LA, just kind of being the point of contact. I have peers at other studios that are also senior producers that I work alongside, working with Aaron Roberts on the global production of this whole saga.
And so, a lot of it kind of ties in together, right? You have the how to get the assets into the engine, and then you have how do you make them look pretty, but somebody's got to track these thousands, hundreds of thousands of objects, right? And that's where production comes in, right? They help us in software like Shotgun software, right? Is something that we use that we kind of, it allows us to track our assets and allows us to visually store the status of the asset, right? And so Eric will also help me and everyone else to ensure that we have a way to track the assets, store the assets, and then organize everything that we have, and then help us when we are short on resources. And to make sure that we balance it out so we can hit our deadlines, right?
Yeah, resource management's pretty key, but obviously working with these guys who know how long it actually takes, because that's not my forte. But I then hopefully will help them strategize and go, okay, who do you need, or how much do you need to get that done, or not get that done, or do we need to work a couple extra hours or not work a couple? Right, that's the stuff I hopefully help with.
All right, so we have 3 guests on the show today who all specialize in some way, shape, or form in making Star Citizen a reality. So we are taking questions live from our RSI chat. You can join the RSI chat if you're a backer and subscriber at robertspaceindustries.com. When you go up to the top, you see community, and then you see chat. In there is a subscribers tab. Now, this subscribers tab is the only place we're taking questions from for today, because this is a subscribers town hall. So please put your questions in there and preface the question with the word question in capital letters and brackets. It helps me dig them out through the other chat that's going on in the area at the moment. So right off the bat, we have some questions coming in. Sean Tracy, geez.
First up.
What a surprise.
First up.
I have a question for Sean.
That's who I always ask my question. That's who I ask my
Well, yeah, because
Sean-
I just give it all away, right?
Yeah. The lighting in the CitizenCon demo looked absolutely amazing.
Sorry, the which? The
Homestead.
lighting. The lighting.
The lighting.
Specifically.
The lighting in the CitizenCon demo looked absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
You mentioned getting the great warm sunset for free, which implies that there's now some major systemic differences in the lighting model that there used to be versus what there is now. Can you touch on the difference, and will we see that in 2.6, 3.0?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I really meant about getting it for free is, it's in a system. It's part of the positioning of where the sun is versus where your camera is on the planet. And how exactly those rays are actually getting scattered through the atmosphere. So what I mean by being free is that there's no artist going in and saying sky is blue, sky is green, sky is, at 6 a.m. It looks like a sunset or a sunrise or whatever it's supposed to be. So this happens automatically. So it's a massive switch to how the engine was doing it before. What's interesting is we used to fake the exact same values within our time of day system. So the typical CryEngine system was a time of day system. And what it is, it's 0, 12, 24 hours. You had a whole timeline of when the sun would be at a certain position above your head. So depending on that position, you could keyframe a whole ton of values. Again, the sky color, the clouds, how bright the sun is, all kinds of, there really was like 120 different properties. It's pretty crazy.
Anybody that's spent any time in our community making these CryEngine videos has played with time
Right,
of day
we played with time
quite
of
a
day.
bit.
Yeah, and
So what this actually does is it's not that we've removed time of day, it's that we've decoupled the sun from a skybox. So no longer is it 6 a.m. anymore. It's only 6 a.m. because of where that particular sun is versus where you are on that planet. Because, if you think about it, time zones across a planet, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So we decoupled the sun, made it an actual entity within the world, within the actual map itself, so that way we can place it. And then one of the things that a lot of people noticed, and I'm super glad they did, was when we did this 2-planet transition in our little tech demo, you saw that the sun was pretty high up in the sky on one planet, but time didn't switch, or just our positioning, our relative positioning to the other planet switched. So it was sunset in that particular location on that one planet that we went to, but it was middle of the day.
Same star, 2 different planets.
Exactly. So it just becomes a positional thing on that entity rather than a keyframed thing on a track, if that makes any sense.
Now, is it just position, or are there atmospheric conditions that will determine how that
So
light...
many atmospheric conditions. Oh my goodness. So Carson Wenzel, again, one of our heroic programmers.
Hi, Carson.
And Carson was
He's
at
watching.
Crytek before. He wrote a lot of the atmospheric stuff within time of day for the CryEngine. So to do it sort of properly, I'm sure he really liked being able to do. So what we did was make it so that the atmosphere has a pre-computed gradients that we can put into it. So basically, the artist is actually aligning what that atmosphere does based on the sun color that's coming into it. So we can make an atmosphere a little more green. We can make it a little more, red. You can change the composition of the atmosphere. You can make it thicker. You can make it thinner. It's really, really important because you can go on different planets, and some need to look like there's just a sky above you, but other ones are going to have a very thin atmosphere where you can see all the stars. You can see most of the stuff that's just beyond you in space. So this was a pretty big system that Carson worked on quite a bit. And the benefits, you're seeing it already, that we get all this sort of real-time atmospheric scattering and shading for free, depending on what positioning you're in, from the system. I think that's the biggest
I like
strength
the way
of
you
the
use
whole
the term free.
because it's free. Well, it's not
is.
free because
It is, but that's
Karsten
what started the
busted his
question,
ass,
right? Yeah.
working on it for however long.
Believe
So
me,
it's not free by any.
freebies are so hard to
by
come
any-
by. It's great to have.
You went from
have
a
wins.
system that you had to create this skybox, this texture set for the morning and for the afternoon and for the evening, and then you had to have these reflection pass textures that had to get baked for every situation, and then what were you going to do, blend through them all? Then what happens if you change your ecosystem? To have an artist have to manually make every single sky for every single possibility just wasn't feasible.
No, not at all.
And so this system allowed us to have these endless possibilities, so to speak, with having very minimal artist labor. And so a lot of our the texture memory usage that we would normally use comes for free now. A lot of the labor that we would normally pay for comes for free now, and you get a much more realistic system. And
the other thing is the performance on top of it. The performance of this particular atmospheric system makes it so that we can change all that in real time, have multiple planets. It's so much higher performant and higher quality than the Crisis stuff that was in there before, CryEngine.
And that's exactly what we're talking about, right?
Slamming.
Higher
hit the
quality,
table.
less labor,
Yep.
more efficient. That way we get things to the backers faster and make it better.
But there is a drawback to all of this, right? And the drawback is that there's though the artist can change some of these atmospheric conditions, it's not all of them. So and this is the mark I think of a really good graphics programmer, is that they'll give you enough rope, but not so much that you'll hang yourself. Yeah, exactly. So and the best ones, and I shouldn't call Carson graphic writer. He's far beyond just graphics, but
Hi, Carson.
it's like, that's a big part of it.
Did you think, when you first came on board Star Citizen, did you think we'd have this system in place now?
This had to be in place. There was always the idea that time of day was a very static, and static in terms of you can't go out and fly to the sun. It's just a point in the sky that's always going to be there.
Yep.
I absolutely expected that there would have to be some level of salinity.
This is a question for me, I guess. The Polaris is listed as having size 10 torpedo launchers, but the PDF manual states size 6 torpedoes. Could you clarify? Yes, actually, this is my camera. The torpedo system changed. It was size 6 in the old system. The system changed. It was size 10. That change made the website. It did not make the PDF before it went to printers. So those new brochures that are going out with those who have purchased the Polaris will have the correction in the brochure. It is a size 10 torpedo launcher. So that's what that is. All right, another question for you guys. We've seen rolling hills and mountains, i.e. basic height map stuff. Do you plan for much more complex worlds? Cliffs with overhangs, like maybe multi-Z coordinates, bizarre stuff like we would see in an alien sci-fi fantasy, worlds full of rock towers or other bizarre stuff requiring a far more advanced algorithm?
I think so. I think that one thing that we also really stride ourselves on is not going 110% procedural, still having some artist ability to go in and kind of customize certain layouts in certain areas to really highlight the location that you're traveling to.
Yep.
Right. So I'd imagine that we're going to continually press on as far as making more and more interesting landscapes with the procedural stuff, and then we'll also have a way to artists to go in and really make something alienistic and special for certain locations.
Procedural is a tool. It's not the destination. It's the thing we built to let
I think
us
it
build.
gets us like 90% of the way there, right? You know, it gets us very close to what we need. And then,
I like the term procedurally assisted.
Procedurally assisted. Procedurally assisted.
You heard it here.
You heard it here, folks.
Trademark.
I love it.
Let's see.
Procedurally assisted. Yeah. Actually, a little more about the atmosphere. Let's talk a bit more about that because I don't think people appreciate everything that actually goes into this. No, seriously, because there's a lot of work there. One of the things that you have to consider with the atmosphere too is indirect lighting on a planet. So one of the things that we used to do in the CryEngine was we had an ambient level of lighting, and this is all the lighting that happens when a light isn't directly touching something, but it's actually shadowed, right? So if you think about it, the atmosphere is the sky and the atmosphere is the thing that generates most of that. So actually what Karsten's done is he computes an irradiance volume basically around the entire planet, so that all the locations of it get the indirect lighting that's correct for that location. So it takes the terrain into account, it takes the atmosphere into account and everything. And then the direct lighting also changes a little bit depending on how it comes through the atmosphere. So again, there's a lot that goes into this atmosphere, and I'm not sure it's fully appreciated,
That's
but
awesome,
I want
because
to.
it's almost like simulating bounce lighting a little bit, right?
It's
kind of what
simulating
it's doing,
global
right?
illumination
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah, it's,
And why do we do all that? Why don't we just mail it in?
Because otherwise everything would be black. Like if you put a shadow on it, black. There'd be nothing there because what shades it, what amount of lighting would be there. Every other, I shouldn't say every other game, but a lot of the current and previous generation games had one level of ambient term, and that would mean that if it wasn't getting direct light, this would be the color that it was getting shaded with. But it's like one color, one setting, and that's it. I mean, you might animate it, you might color grade it, but it's not a great solution.
How awesome is that as an artist for us? Is that amazing?
well, it's essential. It's essential to make things look right and to look good. So it's it was great that it got implemented because it people are commenting on how great that PlanetSide stuff looks, and what Sean's saying, there's a lot to it, and it's the little things like that that become very big things visually.
And it saves some time. Otherwise,
have to
it
do it by
sucks
hand.
right now because now when you're in a station, like we're working in stations and things, we have a system called environment probes that we use for the ambient lighting everywhere else but on a planet. But when you're working on a planet, it's like, oh, forget about the probe. Oh, yeah, right. We've got the irradiance here. Oh, no worries about probes. But then when you're up working on the stations now, it's like, oh shit, I gotta put probes back in. Bleep. Sorry.
You're watching the last episode of Subscribers Town Hall here on CF.
If they can't handle that,
There's a delay. We'll
they
believe it.
can't handle this game.
So Eric,
Yeah.
or maybe Forrest, we'll see which one of you wants to tackle this one.
Sure.
Where is the female avatar?
That's a great Forrest question.
Blame Stephen Bender. Blame Stephen Bender.
So there's a lot that actually goes into the female avatar. It's not just making the model and getting in there, right? There's the whole animation system that also needs to work with these characters. So currently there is a significant amount of work going on with the animation side to make sure that that character is going to be working properly, because we do have the female model done. We're currently in the process of taking a ton of clothing that we've made for the male character and then basically refitting it and recreating it to work with the female characters. That way everything is going to be modular across the board, even though the female and the male have different size fitting clothing to make sure it conforms to the body properly. But currently the artists are making all the female clothing. We got our female model looking absolutely fantastic. We got all the female heads running in parallel with all the male heads. And then the last thing that we really will need to get working is all the animation side stuff, which I'm sure Sean.
For perspective, so we have a character, we have a female character. How many people will touch this character? How many in this company, right? And we can just talk departments. Touch this one extra character to add to our game.
So on the high level,
I don't need names, right? But
on the
just
high
department.
level, you have your animation discipline is significant to it. You have your tech animation discipline, right, to make sure that everything's working properly and technically set up
which are
correctly.
different teams.
Different teams.
Animation's still in their title, but they're
That's
different
right.
teams. Yep.
That's right. Because the animation is responsible for the actual animation and the movement. Tech is responsible for getting it working.
Yep.
Along with animation a little bit, right? And then you have your kind of tech artists on more of the art side to making sure that everything is working properly, efficiently, draw crawls are correct, and you could make sure we could populate with plenty of characters without breaking the game. And then you have your character artists themselves.
Make it, yeah.
And then you have your concept art that needs to make sure that everything looks right before we go spend the weeks it takes to actually create something properly. You have your character art director, right, Josh Herman. You have the whole head department, which, you know, we have 3 Lateral and, you know, Imaginarium and a whole group of people in-house that run that whole area. So, you know, it's a massive undertaking. And then you have people just doing the sculpting of the character and the low poly.
And tech design touches it, doesn't it, for loadouts?
Then once the character's done
Yep.
and it's working, and then yes, you have to get it over to the tech design, and then you have to figure out, okay, how do the attachments work? How do things get swapped out? What, you know, how do you put this on you? You know, if we have the females in the Marine outfit, right? We got to make sure that we set up all the item attachments on all the armor pieces so it can grab everything properly, because the proportions are slightly different than the male. So we got to make sure that when you reach for that gun, right, it's gonna work, right, as opposed to, you know, all that stuff. So,
And then QA.
and then
We'll
once
make
it's
sure
done
not
with
broke,
all the
all
tech
those people
stuff,
touch it, didn't
then you
break
get
it.
it to QA, you know, and then get all that working, and then you throw it in the game, and then absolutely nothing works.
Yep.
And then you
And you might have code bugs, you might
Reevaluate.
have things you got to fix because
Then you
it doesn't
got
work.
bugs, so you
so,
gotta-
so the reason I asked is I was on a panel we were talking about second character in a video game, any video game ever, right? And the question was why is there only one in there? I don't get it. I don't understand why there's only one in there. And somebody made just a random comment, was like, oh, it's hard. No, it's not just hard, right? And obviously what we're doing is hard. We got a lot of people, so there's a lot of things you could say against that. We've got a lot of great people on it, but it is a very intricate process to do it right, to get a second character in there, and what we're doing is we're not just getting a second character in there. These guys are building entire pipelines to make this whole thing efficient and faster
Totally.
for future ones.
You
We're
have
doing
to-
all the characters at
you
the same
have to
time.
build
It's
the-
not we're making
yeah.
one, and then when we're done, we'll think about doing another one.
And one
right?
thing we've learned
It's
from
a
this,
bulk.
and one thing we've learned from, you know, our experience of developing this game
Yeah.
from scratch is it's really important to get your infrastructure in place and to prove out all of your techniques and your workflows and your methods. Because if you try to do two things in parallel before you've proven one method, you could be doing them both wrong. And we want to be as efficient as possible, so we want to make sure we get it right, and then we move into the next challenge.
A lot of great lessons learned.
So and that's pretty much the reason the female isn't there right now.
Yep.
So just to give you a real, like, you know, some details on that anyways. The male, so the female and male skeletons are 2 different skeletons, so conceptually completely different characters. Could be a Van Duel, could be, so the implementation of that second skeleton, just like you're saying, is you know, though it's, you know, it's a female, it's just a tiny bit smaller than the male. Yeah, sure, but it is another asset. So it's, but one of the tricks is, okay, now we're gonna make this female. We've got motion captured animations too, but we've also got a lot of authored animations for the male. And I mean, the first game, if you're ever going to implement a female and they can't do everything that the male can do in terms of animation, in terms of using weapons, in terms of equipping
Any
outfits,
gameplay.
oh my goodness, the blowback would be awful. So you have to make sure you are at parity with that male. So because they're 2 different skeletons, we've got, all of a sudden we have to do a different animation sets. So the male in Star Citizen currently has about 6,000 animations or so. Now they're not all in the PU, they're not all seen necessarily by the players at this exact moment, but they will be. And what that means is, that's 6,000 other animations now on the female, and that has to be in parity. And what Forrest was saying was, you can't figure out the problems on 2 different on 2 similar systems at the same time. Rather, get one locked down. So what he means is that we're really not even finished the male, right? We're not finished a male human completely, where he does cover correctly, he does prone correctly, he does mantling correct, and it's not even just doing it, it's that he does it and it looks really good, and we are all happy with it.
Check out-
Once you're there, boom, do the female, because then it's just a matter of transferring animation. We call it, right now we've got a whole bunch of females within the Squadron 42. And a lot of them are transferred over from the male and then feminized a bit, or they are brought in from motion capture data. But again, trying to do 2 at the same time without having locked down and perfected that first one is a real trick. So and we could always just bail and do the easy thing, which is, and we talked about it. We could do the very easy thing of just say, all right, females and males, exact same size. So all of a sudden you share the rig, and you know what? You could have female avatars tomorrow if we made that concession. But females have a different proportion. This is just a reality. And I feel like, and you know, the everyone in charge and the way it went feels that that's important enough to take our time with it. Yeah, have the male locked down and then transfer it on.
And for those wanting to see more about, you know, perfecting the animations, check out this week's Bug Smashers.
Oh, cool.
It's just about the vaulting animations.
About the vaults.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
See, and you can see that it's, the system's there, but it needs to be finalized because there is things that will change to just get a little bit of polish out of it. But then to have to reapply that to a female or another character or whatever. But the cool part is, once female's online, that means Van Duel, Jean, all these other races that we want to do are quite easy to bring online within those systems as well.
What's the quote? The first 90% of video game development is harder than the last 90%?
It was Tim, I think it was Tim Sweeney.
I think it was Tim Sweeney, yeah.
It's the best quote. It's true. 'Cause it's so
The
true.
second 90% of game development takes longer than the first 90% or something.
So it's all about getting those systems in place. Then it's to the races.
That's
Yeah,
right.
totally.
All right. So here's a question.
We didn't completely answer one of the questions before, by the way. Well, no, it was on the terrain.
Go
They
ahead.
asked about more complex terrain features, like caves and
Yeah.
overhangs
Well, that's
and
the next
stuff like
question. That's
that.
the question I was just about to ask.
Yeah, but they already kind of asked that.
We'll
just
ask it
didn't
now.
answer
Jared, ask your question.
Well, okay, go ahead.
What? Oh, no, here it is. I'm going to
It's
ask
okay
this
if you guys
question.
want to.
Sean is
And
clairvoyant.
anybody other than Sean Tracy can answer. Following up on the procedural question, will there be underground caves to explore?
Sean?
And overhangs and things that we didn't answer before, right? So will there be? I can't tell you for sure how we would do it. We could do it, but everybody's got to realize too. Like as soon as you get into the 3D, right? As soon as it's not a 2D representation anymore, things get a lot harder because that is why the CryEngine had a voxel system before. We had a voxel system in the CryEngine where you would define an area, it would copy the terrain into a voxel, and then all of a sudden you'd start sculpting caves, and it was a really cool sort of process. The planets are not voxel. These are planets of using height maps. Meshes. So to be able to represent anything in 3D on a 2D height map is not really possible. That's not something that we can do super easy. So things like overhangs, caves, anything that goes beyond that 2D isn't really built into that system. Now, will there be? Because to make these things, you do it the typical way that games have done it in the past, where you actually make the models of this stuff. Yeah, and it's not an odd thing, and I don't think it's a cop out either by any stretch of the imagination, where you model those objects because we put tech in place so that those models now look far more part of the terrain, and it's pretty hard to tell already. Like in the Homestead demo, it's hard to tell which ones of those are actual assets that have been placed with the distribution system, or if those are actual terrain features, right? It's tricky to tell, but real easy way is if it's going to be a cave or if it's going to be an overhang, probably model.
So it's not that they won't be in the game. It's that
Right,
they have to be
is it's-
created.
Right, they're not going to be created from this current planet system
It's
because
more of a
that's
question
just
of
not
what
how it
system
works.
drives it, right? And,
Right, and how important is it after all, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I think you start with the art, right? And you get the art in there, and then if it becomes, the importance level, gets higher and higher and higher, then you start figuring out better tech solutions because you find out that it's a good use of time, right, to go that route. But again, prototype it, get it in there, and let's see how it works, But yeah, art you can do pretty much caves, you can do whatever you need. So cool stuff. Yeah.
Eric,
Yep.
what's your philosophy for keeping devs on task that might have many dependencies in an agile environment? Would you describe CIG's process as pure agile or some sort of hybrid? Is this person a producer?
Wants to be a producer. That's a question I would have asked before I was in this industry. First of all, there's a difference between philosophy and what's actually happening in practice, right? Mm-hmm. You can have philosophies all day. Production tends to have very good at pontification, right? We can talk because that's part of our job. But generally, I judge someone based on their philosophy because that's what they'll do in emergency or chaos situations sometimes. What is CIG's production process? It depends on the pipeline, honestly. We can't have one specific way to do everything, because that's not how what we do works, or really anything works when it comes to creative projects. I've never worked on a project at any company where I had one way that worked for everybody all the time. That's not how this works. It depends on.
I think that waving the gun around gets the point across.
Yeah,
pretty good.
the live gun fire in the studio is very powerful.
So are massages.
So are massages. So yeah. So some teams are really hardcore agile, right? It really works well for them because two-week sprints is a great, right? Software development 2-week sprints are fantastic. Art assets, that's not necessarily the best way to do agile. It doesn't work the best.
I think the perfect example would be take like the either the ship pipeline or even better example, the character tasking pipeline,
Yep.
and then take a graphics engineer's task. So a graphics engineer is much more agile. It's you literally have a list of things that need to get completed, and then you queue them up in order, which is an absolute agile production method. And then you have the other route, which is more art tasks, which is more pipeline and disciplines, right? So you have your upstream dependency and your downstream dependency, and you start with your concept,
Yep.
and then you have your you have your design guide, and then you have your concept, and then you have the high-res sculpt, and then you have the game topology, and then you have your texturing,
Yep.
and then you have then it goes off to you have your animation, and then it starts branching, and you start having this tree of like parallel dependencies, and it gets a little more complicated. But so I think you're right. It really depends on the discipline that you're talking about.
And in all of our pipelines, the discovery process is very important. What we're doing across the board in certain areas is unique. Some of it's not, but most of it's very unique. Discovering things is very hard to schedule and plan and organize. You do plan for it. It's called adding time, because you know it's going to happen and come. But when you're doing something unique, you can't be. We're not making houses. We're not manufacturing trailers. We're making something creative.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of creative people. Creative people have great ideas, and sometimes their other ideas are better than their current ideas. So understanding which one's the best idea to use at the time, which one you take and put in the backlog, which one you activate on to get out the first version, right? There's all kinds of factors that go into planning, organizing, scheduling.
He's so political.
For me-
it's the way you said that. You were saying that some people have bad ideas,
For
but
me-
you didn't say bad oh man.
For me, I didn't look at this camera.
talking about you?
This camera's on. We can
No,
look at this
no,
camera.
he's-
Let's all look at this camera.
He's really good at wording it.
For me, I think understanding, working alongside your leads, working alongside your directors is absolutely key. Production, our job is to somewhat stay partially outside of the actual details, because then we can look at it objectively if we get too far in. But at the same time, we need to have some basic level of knowledge, right? I always think a good producer did the work before generally, right? Either in their degree or their background. Pure business guys or girls are cool. And they have something to offer as well, but I found that they have more challenges unless they've actually done it themselves, even if it's like a school project or outside, you do a mod outside of work, right? It helps to have that level of knowledge. You can't know everything all the time, so you have to rely on your team, and there has to be a level of trust, right, between your folks. So back to your question, what is my philosophy, my production philosophy?
I don't remember.
Well, I'm
Here's what CIGs.
yeah, well, the original is what's your philosophy, and then what's CIG's production practices. I'm hoping these guys probably at this point could answer what my philosophy is, but the perfect project management triangle, of course, and I talk about this quite a lot, the health of your staff, the culture that you're cultivating, the support, I'm going to bang on the table because I know you guys like that, the support system that we try to provide, work-life balance is very important, but my philosophy is work alongside the team to get it done as fast as we can without killing anybody.
It's keeping your head afloat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're always trying to keep track of everything that needs to get done, and a lot of ththings that we do we've never done before. So a lot of times it's kind of hard to give estimates or track stuff until we've done it once, and then we're like, okay, we kind of know what this is, how long this takes, and then we can kind of start doing a production roadmap, right, on to say this is when this could get done. And the more times we do it, the more metrics we have, and the more averages we have.
Totally.
We've done this 10 times now. We've known it's taken this much time each time. Just average that number out, and we got a pretty good idea. So,
Totally.
and tracking that data is what's really important, right?
It is very important. It's very difficult without the
Yeah.
right team, but it is very important.
Especially because we move fast.
Yeah, we do. And every time you add a new element to that process, it changes generally the bid, right? So Forrest and I were early on working together on characters when the pipeline was in its infantile stages. forced in some great work. The team's now doing awesome stuff. But that initial number we got from how long does a character take, we were so proud of that number. In our pipeline, in our process, with our team, what does it take to build a character from start to finish with one artist, right? You generally do man months or by individuals.
Right.
But now, as the team's grown, as the pipeline's adjusted slightly, as things have gotten more efficient, some things have gotten a little harder, we've gotten more people in play, that changes your bids. So you start with that number, but that's probably not going to get you to the end. It might be faster, it might be slower, but it's fun.
And once you have all your tasks and your bids laid out, and then you can start doing stuff like, okay, to get all this stuff done, it's going to take until like 2022. Then you're like, okay, but we only have one resource. So what if we had 4 resources?
Correct, yep.
And then you see how it goes, and it allows you on the production side to balance all of these, to get your numbers into, when you need to release by. And obviously there's other factors like you bring on new people, there's the ramp up time, and stuff like that. So, the challenge is growing a company.
Yeah.
And still developing, at the same time, and try to keep track of everything. So it's a tough job, but
Somebody's got to do it.
somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, follow-up question for Mr. Tracy. If female characters are smaller, would it not make it so that the smaller profile gives an advantage in a firefight?
It could. The thing is we've the way physics works on a character is it exists on the skeleton. So yes, you have a conceptually smaller skeleton on the female. Now, it's not dramatic enough that I would actually even make a change between the male and female, and it goes back to what I was talking about before. Is an equality thing. It's not good to give a gameplay advantage just based on the sex of your character. I don't think that's fair, and it's probably it's probably primed to be argued whether or not that's the case. I tend to hate it in there was some MMOs that I'd played in the past where it was actually the best thing to do to scale down your characters to the absolute smallest you possibly could, so that in a mass, a gaggle battle, you would be the hardest to click.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, I get it, but I don't want to encourage it. So basically what I'm saying is that I'd prefer, and it's likely, well, it is the case right now, in the Squadron 42 female character implementation, that the actual the physics representation of that skeleton is identical to the male. So it's the exact same.
Can I just say that this is one of the reasons I absolutely love this community? Because immediately we started talking about min-maxing in FPS.
Yep.
With the character, fan-freaking-tastic.
So is that why every time we try to play a game, you try to pick a skinny dwarf?
Yeah. That's just me projecting.
I never said that. I just thought you had a thing
projecting.
for skinny dwarfs.
There's a difference between projecting and min-maxing. So,
Yeah, right,
You try to do both, is what it is.
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
So hopefully that answers the question.
Look how much we learn about Sean.
Now-
I know.
This is great.
What is a little weird about that is that, the hitbox does extend a bit past what you can actually see on that character. So, I mean, we're talking a couple inches, but it might be enough that actually we want to change some things. But we would probably make it so that we have a perfect average between the two. So you make the male one a tiny bit smaller and then make the female one a tiny bit bigger so that they actually line up correctly and perfectly to each other.
It's a thing that we can address in balance.
Definitely.
All right. All right. This is a question. I know this is a question for, but for most games now, your CPU speed is more important than the number of cores your processor has. I just built an i7 5930K with 6 cores and hyper-threading. Do you think Star Citizen will use all of these cores better in the future, or will raw CPU speed still be most important? Forrest.
I thought that was for you, dude.
Yeah, that's for Jared. Jared, go for it.
Actually, I'll let Sean answer that one. 'Cause Sean probably has a better idea.
Better in terms of scaling, it will be to have as many cores as you can. The future of most, well, I shouldn't say that at all. I just don't want to make an assumption like that. The parallelization is the big improvement as we move forward, and you'll see better and better utilization of the cores the longer we work on it. So I would say you'd want to get more cores.
Yeah, I would.
But again, if there's a happy medium in there.
I know.
Where it's like, don't get anything that's crazily slow, but just completely paralyzed, because it might be a lot slower. But yeah, we do a fairly good job of the multi-threading right now.
18 cores running at 700 megahertz.
Sure. That'd be awful.
I mean,
No, it's like your brain though,
Yeah.
actually, because they're.
My brain or Inouye's brain?
No, it's just a human brain.
yeah, I mean, I just built a computer and I definitely got the 6 cores in there. You know, like
Yeah.
utilizing them full speed ahead. You
6
know,
cores with hyperthreading, you're fine. I mean,
Yeah, that's push it.
you're good.
Push it. Just do it.
Right. Reminder to folks that we are taking questions from the RSI subscriber chat on robertspaceindustrials.com. You can submit your questions there. We also collected some questions from our subscribers' den in the forum. That's where some of these questions have been coming from today. Another question from that thread. Can you guys tell us something about an upcoming feature that you're looking forward to? What's something on the horizon you're looking forward to that, not spoiler or something?
See, all mine would be super spoilers.
I mean, I'm a big FPS fan. I always have been, right? Going back to before, but GoldenEye, right? And then and Counter-Strike and all those good ones. So I've always had a little in my heart.
Why
like,
you laugh
special
at
place.
GoldenEye? GoldenEye is like
GoldenEye's awesome.
No, I played GoldenEye on N64.
FPS
Keep going,
are a little. Thank you. A little closer to my heart. I'm also a huge MMO fan, and I love big whatever. But I can sit down and grind through some death matches and some stuff. So I'm personally looking forward to Star Marine. I'm really enjoying playing it. I think it's got a lot to offer, and I think this it's only going to get better from the first time we introduce it. Again, we've got it in the game already, right? So you can get some basic functionality of running around and shooting people, which I'm already loving when I'm in our map now. But I think it'll be cool to have that mode. That's something I'm personally very excited about. I'm a huge deathmatch fan, so I enjoy ranking up the kills.
To go with that, I think something that in the future that I'm kind of looking forward to is I want to be boarded. I want some ship.
I know.
I want that FPS. I want
Yeah.
you to be able to get into my ship and
Yeah.
start
So he wants to
firing,
be
and
boarded.
defend that ship.
Totally.
I mean, I think that would be
wanna
super
be-
sweet. I want to be.
I'm sorry.
Totally. No, I don't. I'm just the whole multi-crew aspect of our game. But yeah, if we're gonna talk about that. That's stuff I'm excited about. I can live on my ship.
What's your favorite?
It's not very sexy by any stretch of the imagination. Object
Hair
container
swap?
streaming.
Oh, that's a big one.
a
Seriously,
great one.
that's one of the biggest that is as big as the 2.0 rollout. The mini PU stuff. Once that's online, the universe is our oyster, basically.
that's right.
Because that's
Do you want to
pretty
just
much
kind
the
of
one.
That's a
Can
big
you
one.
just give them a brief intro on what an object container
Wow,
is?
I mean, there's kind of a lot to talk about with object container streaming, but just the basic idea of an object container, and it sounds so simple. It's like,
mean,
why
you're
didn't that
literally-
exist already?
Container with objects in it, right?
Sure,
Close
exactly,
the lid
but-
so you
but-
can't access it, and then push it through it in a
Sure, but you could say that a prefab or an archetype was kind of the same sort of
Right.
thing before, or just a group of entities. Why don't you just group them together and call that an object
Right.
container? Well, it's kind of not that simple because there's the CryEngine had a bunch of different partitioning systems, spatial partitioning systems within there. Physics system had one, render has one. There's a bunch of different ones. So the zone system, this is getting to be very unsexy explanation, but the zone system
This is the
was
unsexy town hall.
was the unification.
But Sean, at the same time, it is some of the most sexiest stuff, right? Like
Is
it's
it?
the stuff you don't see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's
I mean,
the stuff that you don't see, but
Yeah,
it
it's incredible.
takes so much
Absolutely
work. Zone partition system's not hard. It's hard to make them fast. And it's hard to get them to talk to each other if they're different.
Yeah.
So what we had done was first get the zone system online,
Yeah.
and you've probably heard a lot about that, but what that is a more advanced partitioning system that actually unifies them all across all the modules. So physics uses the same as uses the render, uses the same as this. So then you've got to embed those partition systems into a container of sorts that composes a bunch of assets. Now you might have multiple zones within that one object container, but you've got to load them all at the same time, basically.
Sure.
So an object container is exactly like what Forrest is saying. It's just it's a container for objects. But what we have to be able to do is to be able to stream them in and out without keeping them in memory. Basically, on level load, we can't have them all there.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So we need to be able to stream them in and out dynamically. We can do it with prefabs. We can do it with entity archetypes, but nothing to the scale of the object containers. We can do it with small scale ones right now, but it's a little bit slow when it gets pretty hefty. So that's what Stephen Humphrey's been working his rear off
tail
working
off,
on it. So that streaming is actually very quick, and it gets all
And
those
the
assets.
type of objects that go into the container, a great example is like the space station,
Yeah.
Right. That's we want those things could be massive, and we need to officially stream those in. Right.
Sure, and it's not just the station asset. It's like
everything
the
in the
station asset,
station.
the shop in it, the character in it, the gun that he's holding,
All
the
the
attachments
effects at
on the
play.
weapon that he's holding.
Yeah.
So there's a huge hierarchical load that has to happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of this, and it just CryEngine conceptually, you would do all this on level load.
Yeah.
You would do.
That's what I was just gonna
scale
say. It's
extensions.
almost like
You
in the
would do-
past you work with level streaming, and we're almost like we need to go so far past that because we're
Yes.
endless. We needed to stream objects in, and it's
Yeah.
almost like they are levels. So it's almost this
That's
like
exactly what an object
incredibly
container is,
impressive
yeah.
level streaming system with level inside of a level. Like,
Right, that's exactly how I explain it now too. Is that if anybody had worked on a CryEngine project or worked in the CryEngine before, or even on any other
Any game engine,
level
level
editor,
stream, yeah.
the object container is the equivalent of just that level.
Yeah, that
completely.
level stream,
but
yeah.
it exists in the paradigm of a larger level.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's,
And I'm sure we're
it's
we're
kinda
mucking
crazy.
it up. I'm sure the people that write this stuff are like,
Yeah, Humphreys is going. Man.
He's watching right now.
you're not even
Steve.
close.
We love you, Steve. We're super excited for what you're working on.
No, it's pretty close. But again, the object container thing, it's essential for capital ships. It's essential for universe streaming. So being able to go from planet 1 to planet 2 with whole cities on them and
Yeah,
all this kind of
exactly.
stuff. And that's how it's all going to work. So
Well, I just won't ask my question about object containers right now.
is there really an object container question next? Oh, that's hilarious.
That's why I gave Forrest the look when he asked
Excellent.
my question.
Oh.
No, basically you covered everything else. The only part that's left
like
of their
that.
question is about the size. What
Size limitation, and you know what? That's something we're figuring it out right now, and it's just a perfect segue into the.
No, I was all ready
anyways.
for it.
Nice
So
segue.
I'm saying I'm most excited about the streaming coming online, and by the way, it works pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is a tough nut that we haven't been able to crack yet. We've cracked it.
Oh, it's cracked.
It's just we've got to figure out what we can get out of it. So we don't yet know exactly the size that we want to make them. We've tried various sizes. I mean, I've put a singular character into one, and we have capital ships in one. So we need to set those budgets. The other difficult thing about it, and if anybody's worked on a game project, they'll understand this, but managing level budgets. So not per view budgets, but everything in the level, you've got to make sure that designer 1 knows, oh yeah, you just added 10 megs. Designer 2 knows, oh yeah, you just took away 4 megs. We need a way of budgeting those designers on being able to do certain things or not do other things. And we can't yet tell them until the streaming is working exactly as we need it, what the optimum size of that container needs to be, what kind of assets can go in there, what kind of ones don't, should they be separate, all those kind of rules, and that's really actively what we're doing over the last few weeks anyways.
And in the end, it really comes down to a numbers game.
Totally.
Right? Profiling at the very end comes down to a numbers game. This is the numbers you have to work with, and you have to stay within your budget. Right?
Sure.
Gotcha. All right, we are just about done. One of the final questions here.
Just get warmed up.
We have
Yeah.
we have a quick question in relation to the atmosphere currently. We enter it at about 10,000 feet. Is there any plan to extend the atmosphere to higher altitudes?
Yeah, and it's all extendable. It's all user defined, so the artist defines it. I haven't measured some of the ones that we have in there right now, but absolutely, I would think that would be a big part of it. I think one of the big reasons they made them pretty shallow was just the amount of time
Yes,
that
we
it
get
took to
through it,
get
yeah.
down. Yeah. So I think if they did it realistically, it would just take a long time. But yeah, I mean, short answer is that it's actually just a setting.
And what's cool, I think that I completely didn't even think of until I realized it did it, is they do put some code in there that makes sure that the engine knows when you're within the atmosphere and when you're outside of the atmosphere. And that allows us to do a lot of cool things, probably down the road with some gameplay support. Like, I mean, if you're flying in, what is the flight system when you're outside in space? And then if you notice, we have a different flight system when you're actually on the planet stuff. And that's how you know is that atmosphere. And that the code that they put in there to tell us when you're in and when you're out, and then we could probably start transitioning effects in. What do effects look like? Contrails on ships, all this stuff that would happen inside of an atmosphere that may not be as realistic, maybe in space, right? So
Sure.
that's something I'm really
Like,
excited about.
does a bullet go slower in atmosphere?
Right,
Which it
totally.
probably would.
And I mean, we teased some of that in Homestead, but that was the idea, right? When we have that reaction, planetary reaction to the ship, and John Pritchett, I know, one of our physics engineers, very, very smart, talented guy. That's what he's been working on a lot, right? Not just how the Dragonfly works on a planet, but now also how does your
works in
ship fly in
atmosphere.
there? Which ships fly in atmosphere better than fly in space? And these are all great things that we're starting to develop, and I think gives a lot of opportunities, really exciting opportunities. And it's really cool.
One other thing along the lines of what Forrest was saying was, so it knows whether you're in the atmosphere or not. What it also knows about is the gravity around the planet. So that's super cool. The fact that there's even there's a small fall off that happens in there as well. So we have a variable amount of gravity on every single one of these planets. What we don't necessarily show in Homestead is the funny thing that happens to all of us, really. So we're flying around in the atmosphere, whatever. You're in a Connie, and then you get out of your seat, right? But your ship turns off. So this is one of the item 2.0 things. Anyways, we're going to leave the ships on, or give you the ability or something like this. But yeah, as soon as your ship turns off, guess what? Gravity's on.
Yeah, I mean,
So you're walking to the back of your ship, and you don't realize you're actually hurtling towards the freaking ground, whatever rate. And then you get halfway out, and the ship explodes, and you're like, oh right.
and that's going to be
I forgot
helpful
about
when
that.
you're in space too, because say you want to get out, leave your headlights on that's facing an asteroid, and like fly over to it. Kind of use your vehicle
use the
as
lights on.
as an extra light source. Excuse me. So that's super cool. But it is fun to work in these planetary tools because the whole engine was the tool set was kind of built for this kind of flat playing field.
Yeah.
Right now, all of a
It's a lot of things
sudden
to
we're
solve.
working on this planet where you actually like this in space
Sure.
compared to where that normal plane would be, and so. The next challenge really is kind of working on the tool set to make the workflows
Right,
easier.
and all the things we have to re-implement
Yes.
because of that change. I'm gonna make your show super
Yeah, we're just gonna keep
overtime.
talking.
So, like a nice example is what we ran into with the cloth for the Nomad.
Yes.
I think this is a perfect way to explain like what happens. So again, consider the CryEngine really had this idea of Z up. Like that was it, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
Z is upward. So we had this cloth implementation that we put on the Nomad. Cool when he's standing on a perfectly solid plane that has Z up. Yeah, cloth is falling downwards,
Right.
right? However, if you happen to be on the bottom of a planet, no longer Z up, but you're like this, right? So the whole cloth simulation system was assuming Z up. So it thought the gravity was going this way. So as you stood up, your cloth was coming straight up from your head like this, right? So, it looked absolutely ridiculous. And it was totally different depending on where you were on this planet because all of a sudden you're upside down and the engine just had no idea about that.
Pretty much Mardi Gras.
Yeah, exactly. And that happened for a lot of different systems. So luckily, Evo Herteg already put a fix in for that. So that was not a dramatic change that had to happen. But it's so many things like this.
You don't even
It's
think
the
about it, right?
discovery
Sure.
process, right?
Yep.
And I think that's what we were talking about earlier, not just in the production planning phases, but just going through this.
Yeah.
Some exciting discoveries, some frustrating discoveries, but
Sure.
all of them making it a better product at the end, and what we already have out there. Yeah.
And because we're really concentrating on making it scalable, because we want this game to be around for a very long time, So in the past, Crisis, you just drop that Wind NT in, and it went on that.
Oh, yeah,
and
right,
you're
right.
good, right? But
Yeah.
now we're like, wait a minute, we don't want to just have designers place Wind entities over an entire planet. That way, it kind of moves. Now you need a system that's more proc that can actually make sure that the wind is curving around the planet properly and working. It's just all these little things, but that's the fun of it and that's the challenge. But once the foundation's built, and then we're really sprinting.
These
towards the finish line.
planetary-sized little things. That's what I love about that.
things. Yeah.
And with that brings our October Subscriber Edition Town Hall to a close. Thank you so much to Eric Hiron Davis, for Stefan and Sean Tracy. If you're interested in learning even more about our procedural generation system, tune into Around the Verse tomorrow. Emanates from our Frankfurt office, and you'll see some even more information about the procedural
And thank
system.
you, Jared.
And thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Jared.
As
Thank you,
always.
I just sit here and read the questions. So, again, Eric, Forrest, Sean, I'm Jared. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye.